15 years, Gavin Friday has been one of the most original, charismatic and maverick talents to emerge from Ireland. He came from the north side of Dublin alongside his friends in U2, fronting a band called the Virgin Prunes. Surreal art rockers is what they were called, the likes of which Ireland had never seen before, or indeed since. In the past 6 years, he's released 3 solo albums, which mix pop and burlesque and rock and cabaret. But above all, and through it all, Gavin Friday has remained a unique talent. Okay, Gavin, let's start then with the current album, The Shagging Tobacco. Have you fallen in love with technology in the last few years, since, say, Adam and Eve?
Yeah, I think fallen in love, I wouldn't say fallen in love, become a little obsessed with it. More so Morris Caesar, my writing partner. What really brought it aboard was we were working on the soundtrack for In the Name of the Father, and we had most of the music recorded, and we wanted to mix it in a sort of very contemporary way, because we were using bowrons and fiddles, and it was a sort of a emotional Irish movie, but we didn't want it to be diddly eye syndrome. So we decided, like myself and Bono and Morris, said, let's bring in either a Nelly Hooper or a Tim Simonon or somebody. And Nelly Hooper was doing Massive Attack or something, and we just happened to bump into Tim in Island Records, and that was sort of like the first time we actually took aboard using samplers and sequencers and taking rhythm aboard. And it was almost like a bug, like you suddenly go, whoa, you can do that, and bring in real musicians on top of it. And we got on with Tim aesthetically. Like, he isn't what you'd call, like, just from the sort of the rave world or from the dance world. He's quite eclectic himself, and he was a Virgin Prunes fan. So it just made logical sense for us to go work with him on Shagging Tobacco.
Well then, the title track then. I mean, Shagging Tobacco, it's just what? Just the joys of sitting in bed and not having to go out and just chilling out and having sex and having a cigarette and watching telly.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So that set the whole album off then in terms of sex? I mean,
it didn't. It was like I was going from the A to Z of it. It was like, I became a married man about 3 years ago, and one of the great things is the sort of the comfort of saying, right, this is the person for me, and you go home and you chill out and you have your bottle of wine and you smoke or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's almost like a sort of a celebration of that. But I don't just delve into that world. It's almost like, I go into the worlds of transsexuals in a song called Dolls, in Mr. Pussy, which is obvious, it's about Mr. Pussy, but then even like looking at sort of like the mysteries of sort of like this sort of demented housewife that doesn't have sex, that's bored out of her head in kitchen sink drama. It's almost like end of the 20th century vibe, and where are we sexually? Do you know what I mean? Throw your arms around me. There's no time to be blue. It's the end of the world. Let's talk the meaning of things. It's up to you, tell me what's going on. It's you, me, world free. You and me and you, we hurt each other 'cause we gotta get through. We're HB and back again, sort of funky electrocution. Trigger happy, shoot to kill, water, honey, moon and hell. Our world is spinning, helplessly. What's going on? It's you, me, world free. You and me and you, we hurt each other 'cause we gotta get through.
you were different from the word go. I mean, surely even before the age of 17 you probably were. Certainly at 17 you were. And if you're going to start wearing your 4-foot dress and getting the 14A bus, I mean, were you surprised that some people maybe in the early 80s, I say now, not the mid 90s, looked at you as though, listen, this guy has to just get out of our way here, you know?
I wasn't surprised at all. You don't think about it when you're 18. When you're 18, it's almost like a hate myself and I want to die syndrome. And it's always like the world according to me, nobody understands me, so I'm going to stand on stage and scream my guts out, which is always will be a really potent thing in music. That's when Nirvana were great, you know, and that's sort of like rock and roll. And, you know, that will always be alive, whether it's in a rock and roll band or an experimental band. I was a very angry young man, and I let the rest of the world know about it. But to tell the truth, Dave, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, you know, from Northside Dublin, we formed the Virgin Prunes when we were 17, and suddenly I was 25, and the Virgin Prunes were over. And I was like, what am I going to do? Where am I?
Okay, well, if you say that, like, by 85, by the end of the Prunes, that you didn't know what you were necessarily going to do, did you have any influences from Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill before that, or did it happen in the interim years, and therefore in 89, the first solo album, Each Man Kills the Things He Loves, that first solo album was very much heavily influenced by the people I just mentioned?
Totally. You see,
It was like, what I'm saying is, there was none of that in the Prunes, was there?
there was always a visual, theatrical point of view, and there was even like a Germanic, almost sort of like cabaret, but I didn't know what cabaret was when I was 16. For me, cabaret was like Liza Minnelli movie, or it was a song that sounded like, you know, the first Kurt Weill song I ever heard was The Doors' Moon of Alabama, and then Bowie did a cover in the early 80s. And it was like, these were my reference points. And I think all these other musicians that say, yeah, well, I was into Scott Walker, it's rubbish. You couldn't have been into Scott Walker in the late 70s. You wouldn't get his records in Dublin, or even London. Do you know what I mean? You got into it in 85, and then you pretended, you know what I mean? But I was into sort of the Liza Minnelli, the David Bowie doing Kurt Weill. But when I was travelling around Europe in the early 80s, I did actually start educating myself. I did open up to sort of Jacques Brel, to Kurt Weill, and I started understanding it. And when I was freaked out when I found out that Brecht was a communist, I was going, what is it all theatre and makeup and emotion? He's actually a little politician here, you know. So you started really, and it was more like, I think the first time I actually tried to really articulate what I was doing was in the first solo album, Each Man. The Virgin Prunes were like, the emotion and the conviction was 100%, but we were like pulling at any influence. Like, we knew exactly what we were doing, but we hadn't a clue.
But like, then you're a bit of a one-man crusade. I certainly were towards the end of the 80s, maybe even more so than now. With I didn't go up the Liffey and the Bubbles, 87 or 88, the Blue Jesus Club. I mean, what were you trying to do there? Do you think that could have got a lot bigger than it probably did, or was it meant to be only a small late night kind of thing? That this whole idea of what we're talking about, a cabaret club or an underworld club or a wine drinking, coffee drinking club, whatever, late night in Dublin.
I think it could have got a lot bigger. When the Prunes ended, which was like late 85, I was freaked out. I didn't know what I was going to do. It was almost like, you know, you losing a mother or a wife or something. And I painted, and it was the only thing, like, I thought I wanted to get away from music. I felt like misunderstood and all those typical things you'd feel after you do something since a teenager. And I painted for like a year and a half, did an exhibition, not because I wanted to. I mean, I painted with Googie, I painted with Bono, and another guy, Charlie Whisker from the NCAD. Did an exhibition and made more money from the exhibition as a painter than I did in sort of like 6 years of rough trade, which most rough trade acts will tell you, except the Smiths. You know what I mean? And I went, I don't want to be a painter. I don't want to be take this seriously. Now, Googie did take it seriously, and he's gone on to do great things. You know, he's quite sort of secure in that area of the world. And I went, no, I don't want to do that. What do I really want to do? I want to perform, I want to write music. So that was really my sort of like chilling out, coming to terms with what I wanted to do.